Protesters are gathering outside the U.S. consulate in Sandton this afternoon for the annual Quds protest. They're expected to march against American support for Israel. My colleague Stephen Kruitus is there for us. He joins us live. Stephen, there is, of course, good afternoon to you again. There's a very obvious reason for why protesters have chosen the U.S. Embassy as the location for today's march.
Absolutely, Michelle. Of course, it's the United States support for the state of Israel that has led to this protest happening here. It is an annual protest that was started in Iran. The crowd has started to grow over the last little while, and you can see a lot more people beginning to arrive here as well. We've heard speakers talking about why they are so angry with the United States, and particularly because of the way it supplies weapons to Israel, as long, of course, with diplomatic support. Well, one of the people who's joined this protest is the leader, the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, Solly Mapaila. Mr. Mapaila, good afternoon to you. You are usually involved in South African domestic issues. Why have you joined this protest today?
This protest is in solidarity with the people of Palestine, particularly at this point in time wherein the Zionist regime of Israel continues the genocide of the people in Gaza and the rest of Palestine, and the U.S. government continues to give them support of military support, giving them bombs and giving them permission to do as they please. So we are gathered here to say the Israeli regime must stop occupation of the Palestinian territories, bring peace in Palestine, ceasefire, stop attacking those territories, and also to call on the U.S. government. That's why we're here at the U.S. consulate, to say they must stop the bombardment of the people of Yemen, as Donald Trump has already launched his own war against another state, and it's not even being condemned even by our own government. So we're calling on government across the world to make sure that they condemn warmongering of the U.S. regime and the threats that they continue to make across the world. But in the main, this is an international Quds Day in solidarity with the oppressed people and the occupied people of Palestine and the entire resistance exists in the Middle East.
We know that the Trump administration is being very tough on South Africa right now. They imposed tariffs this week on our car exports into the United States. We know that more may be coming. How should our government be responding to that?
Well, South African government, the tariff regime, for instance, in South Africa, are way above the WTO rules. We have made huge concessions. Actually, we should be the one imposing more tariffs to gain more taxes for our country. But the U.S. government tariff regime is a different one. It's a way in which Donald Trump is bullying the rest of the world, quite belligerent, in order to make America so-called great again, to consolidate its imperialism. So there are two different forms of tariffs within the framework of the WTO. In our case, we have not been using that space for benefit of our country. In the main, that's why we've become a dumping ground for other products in other countries, and therefore have killed our industrial capacity as a country. Despite that, we remain the most industrialized country on the continent. But that deindustrialization has led to job losses and our inability to become productive in critical areas of our country, and therefore relying on imports from other countries. But Donald Trump is using that as a tool to threaten everyone who doesn't cooperate with him, including the people in Canada, in Panama, Greenland, and many others, particularly Europe now. Of course, it's not only him. Even Biden, just before he left office, he stopped the relationship of Nippon Steel and Japan in order to consolidate the U.S. interest on the steel industry. So it's another form of tariffs, but it's the same. U.S. government system is the same, whether it's the Republican or it's the Democrats, they are all the same. They are just imperialist and aggressive.
So do we need to stand up against this?
Yes, of course, we need to stand up against this. Obviously, in our country, I don't think we should have at an economic level tit for tat with the U.S. because we're not at the same level. They have got their entire budget is 6 times the budget of the entire African continent. So we're not going to compete with them in that regard. But we can assert our sovereignty and our independence. We can refuse to do certain things with them. We don't have to be forced to do certain things with them. That's why we should assert our independence, including even on the nature of what kind of an ambassador they are sending here. because they've expelled our ambassador, Comrade Rasool, unceremoniously. We have not even responded to that thing properly. We didn't respond as if we were in a sovereign state. We should have sent a clear message. We should have called their rep here to DECO to come and account on what kind of treatment is this. And also to say, in the event that the US treats us this way, you should also go back home. But we don't have a government that is quite assertive in this regard, because we think we can beg the Americans, I don't know up to when, but certainly we need to assert our independence. We are a sovereign state, and if America believes in liberalism, in liberal democracy, it should be able to accept the sanctity of our state. But we've known they don't do that. That's why at the moment they have more than 900 military bases across the world. They are in occupier state. In those countries, they didn't ask permission in many instances to come in. They just tell countries, we're going to set up a military base for our strategic reasons. The same thing that Donald Trump is saying about Greenland today.
There are other issues around at the moment. The ANC's National Executive Committee is in a 4-day meeting until Monday. You lead the SACP, which is now going to contest elections on your own, you say. The budget has not yet been passed. I know you're opposed to the VAT increase. If the DA refuses to accept the VAT increase, should the ANC remove the DA from its coalition and work with the EFF?
We have called for the ANC to set up government without the DA. And certainly the fact that the DA is on the side rejecting VAT increases shows how reactionary the Treasury has become in this country. Because we have said the VAT is a regressive tax. It punishes everyone, the poor and the rich. But the rich don't feel it, it's the poor who feels it. So you don't punish the poor in order to raise a tax. You rather go to those who have more, like the rich. That's why we have said increase capital income tax. That has always been a company tax that's been going down all the time over the last 20 years or so. That's the time that we can actually increase it. We have said make us efficient. Kids Battle, for instance, has indicated the fact that if he gets more funding, at least 2 billion, he can be able to recover more than 400 to 800 billion in the next medium-term budget spend. So I don't understand what is the thinking, because they should get their priorities right instead of punishing the poor. But to the extent that the GNU is in crisis, that's good for us, because we have warned that this is a coalition of convenience, a coalition of neoliberals, a coalition of the marketeers. It's not a coalition in favor of democracy and the people as interests as a whole.
So should the ANC work with the EFF instead?
Well, you know, Stephen, this question, the manner in which it's posed so that it's been abused in the media circles and generally in perspective. And because it wants to say we are the spokesperson of the EFF, we are not. What we have said at the beginning, when we said the ANC must set up a minority government, at the beginning we said there are options for setting up the minority government. You can work with the EFF and other parties. You'll get about 50%. And you can remain in the progressive camp, so to speak. The EFF is not reactionary like the DA. So there's not even a debate about this thing. But to the extent that they want to clap us out the same as the EFF, it's unfortunate. But the ANC made a political and ideological choice, for that matter, a unilateral choice, a class choice to work with the DA. They must live with the consequences.
Solly Mapaila, I really appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed. Solly Mapaila, as you know, the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party. The rain is beginning to fall a little here. It is not dampening the spirits, Michelle, of the people here. Some of the speeches have been quite fiery. And you know, of course, because of the situation in Gaza and across much of the Middle East, people will have very, very strong views on what's been happening there. You can see that the crowd has grown slightly. Dr. Syed Hussein, who is one of the leaders of this protest, is currently on the podium. We've also heard from the former mayor in the city of Joburg, a councillor now from El Jamar, Councillor Kabelo Gwamanda was speaking earlier, and I'm fairly certain I saw Khanif Hendricks, the leader of El Jamar and the Deputy Minister of Social Development, here earlier as well. We do expect, depending on the weather, depending on how this progresses. We do expect this protest to last here in Sandton for perhaps another hour or so. We'll keep you updated, Michelle.